Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shimmering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Plz. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks, you're tuning to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Welcome to the show today, and a very special day it is, because it's Sunday, which is supposedly quite special, so I've been told. Oh yeah, we've got something coming on a little bit later on called, oh yeah, what's the name of that guild again? Oh yeah, Nihilum. Nihilum coming on later, just after this show. An interview of epicness, 2 hours of interview awesomeness with Eki and Awake from Nihilum. Very special event, folks. So welcome to the show, and I'm honoured to be the pre-show for this very special event. And after that, of course, we have Octail and Hordak versus the World and the Weekend Report. 8 odd hours of awesome. Brilliant. Right, well, what have I been doing this week? The simple answer to that is endeavouring to sell PS3s, and just let me tell you how difficult those damn things are to sell. It's not entirely surprising, let's face it. I mean, you can look at the machine. It's a very, very large, black George Foreman grill with a really powerful processor in it, and a drive for some kind of new DVD, which nobody has a good enough TV to actually notice the difference on yet. And it's 425 UK pounds. You know how much that is in dollars? That is $800. You know how much that is in euros? That is, I don't know, because what the hell's a euro anyway? It's like 700, something like that, I don't know, but it's incredibly expensive. And trying to sell these things is a nightmare. Now, on launch day, I was in my store, and we'd taken 31 pre-orders for these things, yeah, which for a store my size is not bad, because it's a pretty small store, so we have most of the pre-order customers coming, about half of them. So I sell the unit, and I'm trying to sell them extras, because I've been set a target where I have to sell 3 extra things on top of the PlayStation. So I need to sell, like, an extended warranty, at least 2 games, and maybe a controller, yeah? The extended warranty doesn't even count as one of the 3 things. So I have to fight all day for that. And I managed to sell 2 other units which, you know, haven't been pre-ordered. And then I go in on Saturday to pick up my copy of Stalker and ask them, how many PlayStation 3s have you sold, guys? And they said, 3. 3 machines. One day after launch, we have a full stock of these machines, and we've sold 3. Oh, God. Thank you, Sony, for universally failing at everything. Well, at least we won't have a one-format dominance this time round, anyway. So, yeah, that's my rant for the week. You're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio, and despite what you might think, I actually do talk about World of Warcraft from time to time. Coming up later in the show, we have Ask the Murloc, which I've actually managed to salvage this time round. Evil Adobe Audition. I've actually switched back to an incredibly old version of the software, and you know what, it works fine. Also got a bit of Nubcake news, covering some of the news that never actually happens. And Rapping the Forums deals with a very edgy subject this week, as well as all the usual features, including...
Second Wind!
Yes, Second Wind. Second Wind is a very, very wonderful thing. I'm far away from my mic, and now I'm close to it. Brilliant. Second Wind is all about what we did last week. It's kind of like a serial thing. Not the kind of cereal you eat, but a radio cereal from week to week. It's the radio equivalent of stale Wheatos. And it's awesome. We love it. So yeah, you can expect Second Wind. And what exactly happened last week on Second Wind? Last week's Second Wind content was... Following question. How do you beat WoW? What would you need in order to be a WoW beater? As far as games go. It's a very tricky question because, let's face it, people are already trying. WoW has such a massive market dominance at this point in time that everyone is jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, I've heard there's going to be a Dragon Ball Z MMO, we've got Firefly MMO, World of Darkness, we already know there's a Warhammer Fantasy MMO, and there's going to be a Warhammer 40k MMO. I mean, MMOs are bloody everything. The Mr. Men MMO, the Teletubbies MMO. It's going to happen. Because MMOs is the new buzzword. It's like collectible card games were years ago. There was a collectible card game of anything. Absolutely everything. EastEnders, the collectible card game. Yeah. It does happen. So, I say, MMOs are the new buzzword, and for some reason, everybody gets it wrong. I mean, we can look at the latest effort as a WoW bit was Vanguard, which failed absolutely miserably. It went overly complex and it missed the point, and the conclusion we came to last week was, why did it miss the point? It's too hardcore. And if you make a hardcore MMO like EVE, which I made a comparison with last week, EVE versus WoW, again, EVE is a hardcore game. It's a game designed for hardcore players, and Vanguard is the same, and all these other MMOs, all fighting for this same small market. And then WoW comes along and says, oh yeah, I'm actually going to allow you to play, and it doesn't have to involve excruciating pain. It's the same as if you've ever played an MMO that's ever had a death penalty, you'll know exactly what excruciating pain is. If you've ever played an MMO that has a penalty as regards to dying in PvP, again, I take the example of the old MUD that I used to play. If I died in PvP, not only could I lose experience, but I would lose everything on my corpse because someone would take it while I was dead. I would be resurrected, I would go back to my corpse, and everything would be gone. If I was lucky, the corpse would still be there. If not, someone would have taken its head off, dragged it off to another part of the world, and buried it. I've had that happen before. It's really quite unpleasant. And let's not even go into the fact that if you play a troll and you go outside in the sunshine, your entire character gets deleted. I kid you not. It's a horrific thing. Now, again, that's the hardcore side of things. WoW isn't hardcore, no matter what you might say. Even, endgame PvE is not necessarily hardcore. Either way, you've got an option to deal with that some more hardcore element. Yeah, if you don't want to bash your head against a brick wall for hours upon hours, days upon days, weeks, months, and everything else in between, then you don't have to. So, we had a few emails in with regards to this, and you can email anything, as long as it's relatively savoury, to themurloc@gmail.com. Yes, that is the murloc@gmail.com for this week. Yo. So, what do we got? I have a few interesting emails as regards to this. Second Wind. This is a long one. This is from a guy called Savile. He's from the guild Synergistic on Deathicus US, and he says this. TB, there will be no WoW killer for a few more years unless Blizzard really drops the ball. World of Warcraft has such a great core following right now, simply because of the lore behind the world. Warhammer has a great following as well, but frankly, the issue that will kill it is the Warhammer focus on PvP. A hardcore PvP aspect, like EVE has and Warhammer proclaims it will have, drives away newer players or players that would rather play an MMO for more casual purposes. An MMO FPS may be really attractive to these people, but answer me this, why aren't they already solely playing Gears of War or Halo 2? If Blizzard wants to help the game get even better, have each zone in Outland be completely up for grabs in a Terracar Forest-style PvP event. The person who holds all a dozen nodes wins the zone for like 3 or 4 hours. It's a friendly zone to you and a hostile zone to the other faction. This would help keep the PvP audience in the game while not angering the PvE and new player groups so much. I would love to see player housing and guild housing. It wouldn't unbalance the game, would make RP a squee with joy. Just do like AQ2 did and make your home an instance only accessible by you, and the guild halls only accessible to guilds who pay a fee in-game for a key. Make it a 40-man raid instance without any mobs and perhaps a vendor and bank RPG-centric? Yes, but it solidifies the hold on that community. To solidify the hold on the PvE audience, Blizzard needs better customer service and needs to beta test their own content. The new endgame is looking as bad as Vista right now. Great show, and feel free to paraphrase it if it's too long. No, paraphrasing is for the devil. So yeah, that's a lot of very good points. The PvP idea is pretty good. Whether or not every single zone should be like that, I don't know. It does really impede lower level players. It could be a real turn-off in that sense. If you're just entering Hellfire and it's held by a bunch of level 70s who are going to kill everything in the way. Not only that, but the NPCs are going to kill them as well. That's going to drive people away. I do agree, though, that certain zones should be influenceable in some way or another. The question is, why would you even want to hold the actual objective? This is the problem which has really run into PvP in World of Warcraft. It's like, why do it? All these objectives are pretty much pointless aside from a little buff that you get. It doesn't really change anything. Aside from that, though, it's a good set of ideas, and I do agree with his point there. If Warhammer Online goes heavy PvP, which I imagine it will, and if it goes hardcore PvP, it could lose out. Not that I won't try it, because I'm a big Warhammer buff and I do love that kind of thing. I will try it. Whether or not I like it, I'm not so sure. Whether or not it's going to be a WoW beta, we don't know. Because I can't see the endgame content on it being anything near, bearing in mind it's a PvP-centric game. The point that he did make about MMORPG, he's kind of missing the point there, I noticed. He's asking why aren't people solely playing Gears of War, Halo 2. There's a very big reason for that. If you look back at PlanetSide, and the reason anyone played PlanetSide, one, huge battles. I mean, I'm talking 500, 600 people battles. Not only that, but you have progression, as in every kill you make gains you experience. Every certain amount of experience you gain a level, which allows you to access more gear. It's not a sense of giving you better gear, it's a sense of giving you access to a wider range. You can only spec into certain things depending on how many points you have. And that depends on your battle rank. Now, people want something persistent. If someone pulls off a good MMORPG, it will pull a huge number. The problem is, of course, PlanetSide never really did it properly. And the only other one that I can think of is World War II Online, which is a complete and total joke. So, that's an interesting point to make, though, that anything like that can potentially attract casual players that just want to jump in and play. And again, it's this casual market that Blizzard has tapped into very, very well. It's a very accessible game from the get-go, and by the time you do get to endgame content, you know what you're doing. It's not like they're throwing you in and saying, right, now you've got to go raid Naxxramas, and you've only been playing for 5 minutes. That's not how it works. You don't go out and feel completely and totally lost. You are, to some degree, led by the nose, and that's not necessarily a very bad thing. If anyone wants to beat WoW, they've got to have something that accessible. Now, I've been looking at the upcoming MMOs, and I can't really see all that many that might be there, but let's go and have a look on MMORPG.com and see what we can see. There is one thing that I am about to beta test, and that's Dungeon Runners, which is a test to be a casual hack-and-slash dungeon-crawling MMO. Nice and simple, there's nothing particularly complex about it, and it's got a very comedic theme to it. For instance, I believe someone acquired let me just think of a random example, an epic crossbow called the Cereal Box Crossbow of the Spastic Ape. You know, there's just some really funny stuff in there. Now, I mean, upcoming, let's have a look at the most anticipated RPGs. Warhammer Online, we're talking about that, PvP. Age of Conan is a little bit too hardcore, also a bit PvP, and it's not a great world to base it in my opinion. Stargate Worlds, potentially great. Whether or not it's going to work, different matter entirely, and how long has it been in development, we haven't heard anything about it. Star Trek Online, yeah, potential there. Definite potential there because it's a really good world to base something in. How they're going to do it, though, when everyone wants to be a starship captain, I really do not know. I can't see them sitting in engineering playing with a console for 3 hours on end to gain experience. Lord of the Rings Online, we already know, is dismal. If anyone's actually tried it, it's nothing more than a carbon copy of EverQuest, WoW, and everything else, and it's completely PvE-centric, and it's a little bit too Care Bear, for my honest opinion. It's a great world to base it in, but I don't think it's going to succeed. Pirates of the Burning Sea, potentially a pirate MMO could be really, really good, but I can see some serious imbalance, and I can just see it turning out like Eve. It's a capitalist MMO, and the one with the biggest ship and the biggest fleet is the one that kicks ass, and if you can't run away, you're very, very dead. And Huxley, an MMO FPS coming out with PvE elements, we just don't know because we've really heard very little about it. It could turn out to be great, but something based on the Unreal 3 engine is going to be not so accessible to so many people, and that's a bit of a dangerous thing. So there's your top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 anticipated MMORPGs, and I don't believe any of them are going to capture the casual element that WoW has. It's funny to see that the massive range of people playing WoW attests to its popularity and its appeal to a particular audience. You're looking at businessmen, kids, from the age of 8 upwards play this game, no problem at all. Hell, I think even kids actually younger than that could play without too much of a problem. Old age pensioners play it. Businessmen, wives, husbands, everybody, every walk of life, every ethnic group, every group as regards to work and social background plays WoW. Because it's just that easy to get into, and it's appealing. It's nothing special. It's the same. It's the same kind of settings. It's a fantasy setting with orcs, goblins, elves, as you'd expect, but that appeals to people. It always has appealed to some people, and the setting works. It's got a good, solid basis in game lore, and it's got a good reputation behind it. Now, see if we've got any more emails as regards to this, and I do believe that we do. Let's have a look. Guild Synergistic. There we go. Right. Topic at hand. This is from Jeremy Covell. He says, on to the topic at hand. A WoW beta? I highly doubt it. I can only think of two distinct possibilities remaining for an MMO to beat WoW at this point in time. At one point I would have said DDO, simply due to the fan base, but they did such an absolute crap as regards to the design that any chance of that has gone out of the window. A White Wolf World of Darkness MMO would, if designed well, demolish anything else on the market. The fan base for White Wolf holds is massive, and there are enough PC gamers that like the horror genre to add to that. You've also got to bear in mind the success of the vampire PC games. If designed well, it would seriously knock WoW down a peg. The only other thing I could conceive being a WoW beta would be, and don't laugh because it's a distinct possibility that's been rumored for a while, a Harry Potter MMO. I know that to any grown-up, mature, hardcore gamer, that is Hello Kitty Adventure Island kind of concept, but given the obsessive fanbase that Harry Potter has, think of the sheer numbers. Regardless of how well it is designed, just having the Harry Potter name in it pulls in every 7 to 16-year-old who reads the books. Zomguy can be a Hogwarts champion. I know it will make us groan to think of it, but it could do well. Yeah, that is a disgraceful concept, but yeah, I do see your point there. It could quite easily succeed if they ever decide to do that. It's certainly a possibility. So to conclude, what can beat WoW? It's got to be casual, it's got to be accessible, it's got to be fun and colourful to play, it's got to be not so overly complex, and it's got to introduce your concepts gradually from time to time, and it also has to have a backing in a seriously good franchise. Otherwise, everybody is going to ignore it, and that would suck. You're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. I have a track for you. Dragon Force was requested. Dragon Force will be played. This is Blackfire. The Heal 'em interview is coming up right after this show. Stay tuned for that. Tell your friends, tell your realms, tell the world. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz. You can listen in live on Sundays at 17:30 GMT. That's 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, with a lively musical pre-show kicking off 1 hour beforehand. If you like WoW Radio's productions, then make sure to dig our shows at dig.com and check out our website at www.wcradio.com. Nubcake News! Stop that. Welcome to this week's edition of Nubcake News. Coming up later in the programme, a special report on the Black Temple's first raid boss. A huge brick wall with evil-looking eyes that players must bash their heads against for hours on end, only to find that all they've been left with is a very sore head. But first, all over the world, even in countries without the internet, there has been growing concern as to the state of play in the Burning Crusade, Blizzard's leading card game. Nerfs, buffs, and half a pound of halfpenny rice have been occurring all over the Outlands as players struggle to keep up with a huge number of changes. One is quoted as saying, OMG WFPBQ. Another, somewhat more sensible player is then quoted as saying, all of these buffs and nerfs are hardly compensated by the half a pound of halfpenny rice. I mean, what exactly are we supposed to do with this? Beat angry Murlocs to death with it? Okay, well, I suppose that works, but it's still lousy. Blizzard's response was drastic action, calling Weeble and Bob to the rescue. The hotline is ring. Answer it then, Bob. Your player is slightly confused by the state of affairs and everything. Here in the sky. Sadly, this had little effect on the game, despite being rather amusing to watch, so we called a representative at Blizzard. Go away! We called another representative at Blizzard. What's World of Warcraft? Finally, we called someone who actually made sense. Fangtooth.
Mr. Fangtooth, may I have a moment of your time?
Booga, 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 booga.
How does Blizzard intend to solve the confusion between players as to the constant buffing and nerfing of encounters in the Burning Crusade?
Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows everywhere and... Wait a moment, when did we hire a female reporter?
After the whole Nihilum doesn't recruit girls in small furry mammals debacle, we had to write one in. Equal opportunities and all.
And that's supposed to explain the Murloc sports correspondent, I presume?
Pretty much.
Okay, since we were able to discern very little from Fangtooth's lunacy, we went to Blizzard HQ directly and knocked on the door. At which point we were told to answer me these questions 3. The questions were exceptionally easy, and we were let inside. We had the pleasure of speaking to Zerek, who informed us of a maniacal master plan to fix everything. Hello there, gentlemen, and what is that? It's a female, sir. Oh, yes, right, the new Alliance race. Not used to seeing them around these parts. We're all Horde, you know. Yes, quite. Would you mind explaining the use of the master plan? Ah, yes, we looked at the success of other RPGs as related to our endgame encounters and came up with the following plan. Random encounters!
Random encounters?
Indeed, every time the players take a step in the Outland, they have a random proc chance of being transported to a battlefield, upon which they will encounter randomness.
What do you exactly mean by randomness?
Turn-based combat, determined entirely using dice. Dice? Absolutely. Each player will be provided with a bag of D20, which they will use as projectiles.
Projectiles? Surely the idea is to roll the dice and have that determine the encounter.
We found our players were far more inclined to simply throw things than follow any kind of rule structure. See, there's some of our testers right now. Is this all you're going to be able to do to solve the disparities that have now occurred in the Outlands? Absolutely not. McTheridan is very upset by the recent nerfs.
I am very upset.
See? Very upset. So in the interest of fairness and balance, well, since we nerfed the endgame encounters, we shall also be nerfing the players by lowering the level cap back to 60. Since so many players complained at the increase of the level cap in the first place, we feel this would be an adequate solution to everyone's problems.
And what exactly are the in-gamers supposed to do when that happens?
What the hell is endgame? An adequate solution for all, truly a new and golden age of prosperity, wherein we will grow many more fields worth of half a pound of halfpenny rice. This has been Nubcake News. Good night.
It's not brain surgery, it's just a radio station.
Although we do mess with your head from time to time.
From Tanaris all the way to Nomragon, this is WoW Radio.
Yes, indeed, folks, you're tuning in to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Welcome to the show. Well, those who've just tuned in, and many, many have. That was the sounds of Nubcake News and its very, very silly nature. And, of course, Dragon Force with Black Fire. Right, Nihilum interview will be coming up after this show. Yes, it will. In approximately 1 hour's time, so stay tuned for that. Many listeners, left side, even side. So let's get on with it. Topics for this week. The second topic that I have for this week. It's coming up very, very shortly. But first, I must make a shameless request. Our guild requires a prot tank. Yes, indeed. Blue Plz, the small form epic raiding guild on Masrigo EU, requires a prot tank because our last one was rubbish. We went into Karazhan. He couldn't even work out where to tank Midnight. It was really sad. I mean, we've been gearing up just to go into Karazhan, make sure that everything's just set up just right. We've got the proper players, we've done the heroics, we've got the gear. You know, our feral tank's got gear that he's not going to get better by Grawl, for God's sake. But no! We have a failure of an off-tank, so we G-kicked it, obviously. So yeah, we need another prot tank. We will be willing to pay for transfers. Also, if there's any Holy Paladins out there that would be interested in joining a very nice, very, very nice raiding guild, then just email me at themurloc@gmail.com with the subject Blue Plz Guild. I will be paying for your transfer. Oh, yes. Right, okay, let's get on with this. Second topic for the week, attunement, keying, all that good stuff. If you notice, there's been a very, very nice thing posted on, I believe, worldofwarcraft.com recently, which is one of these really interactive kind of charts which shows you what you need to do for keying up. At least it was here, and has now disappeared. Typical. Absolutely typical. Let's see if I can actually find it before I look like a complete jackass for making things up which don't actually exist. Come on, let me find it. Oh, God, I can't find it at all. All I know is it is there. Trust me. It is there. Now, what it does actually show, specifically, which is really rather nifty, is what you need to get into every single current raid dungeon within the Outlands. Now, that's very, very handy, because a lot of these keychains are really quite long. That's acceptable, because, well, keying. Is it a good idea? That's the really big question. Do people really want this keying up process? Is it a good idea, and why is it there in the first place? Interesting idea. Now, firstly, I'll take the more cynical point of view. And yes, there is such thing as a more cynical point of view. The more cynical point of view is this. Blizzard has put in attunement and keying specifically to keep people out of content that they haven't necessarily finished yet. Now, why would I say that? I'll give a specific example. Mount Hayal, to our knowledge, is a 5-man encounter. This is to our knowledge. I may be completely wrong by this because we haven't been told. Now, it requires 2 things. It requires the Vials of Eternity, which can be acquired from Lady Vash and Kael'thas Sunstrider. 2 of the hardest bosses, if not the hardest bosses at this point in time, in the Outland. Now, either a 5-man is going to be so excruciatingly hard and awesome that it gives you gear better than those 2, or it's been put in there to keep people out of content that they haven't finished yet. Foreseeable. There's no 2 ways about it. It could happen. It most certainly could happen. So, is that the case? Well, let's look at it from a different angle. Why is attunement a good idea? The best way to actually compare is to look at the old legacy content. Now, legacy content was introduced in a way as to pretty much be fed piecemeal to the people who were playing the game. When you first went in, you didn't have a lot of options, and then they added one after one after one after one, and they added one dungeon at a time. Now, when you enter the Outlands, all of this raiding stuff has been foreseen and put in the game beforehand. Now, what exactly are you going to do about that? Because that's changed things around. It used to be 1, 2, 3, 4. You went through those 4 major dungeons: Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, Anchorage 40, Naxxramas. Now, it's a case of, well, you can go here, or here, or here. Whereas there was one Onyxia-style encounter... Wow, someone has sent a text message to my phone. Let's see what it says. Just for an advisor. Terpster says, read my PMs. Terpster, stop interrupting me! Anyway. So, yeah. The attunement, is it in there for any specific purpose? Yes. Because you now do not have this whole 1, 2, 3, 4 and one at the side called Onyxia. You've actually got several encounters that are supposedly Onyxia level, specifically Gruul's Lair and Magtheridon Lair. Now, go and have a look on woweurope.com. We've posted this in the main channel. It's wow-europe.com/en/info/basics/BC attunement. And you will see, you've got your standard, your heroic, and then you've got Magtheridon's Lair, Karazhan, and Gruul's Lair, which are under the title of Raid 1. And then under Raid 2, you have Tempest Keep and Serpent Shrine Cavern. And interestingly enough, under Raid 3, which apparently actually Mount Hayal is a 25-man raid. Interesting to see, to say the least. You've got Hayal. Hayal right now is sitting at the top of the table, and the attunement is massive. If you hold it over, you've got to grab the Vials of Eternity, which means you have to beat Tempest Keep and Serpent Shrine. To beat Tempest Keep, you first have to beat Magtheridon's Lair to complete the Tempest Key. To beat Serpent Shrine Cavern, you have to complete Karazhan. Specifically a Nightbane-based quest. If you lock it down and have a look at it, you need to do quest Nightbane, and you need to go through all of this stuff, beat Gruul's Lair to get in there. Huge amount of attunement to get in there, whereas previously, you're looking at very simple attunement quests that are just there to say, well, yeah, no, so at least everyone can't wander in. Why? Because there's more. It's not so linear anymore. Now, you would think that it would be. Standard, heroic, Karazhan. You'd have thought that would be the way that it went. And after Karazhan, Magtheridon's Lair, Gruul's Lair. However, the problem is that now that they've nerfed Gruul and Magtheridon to the level where they can be taken down in a kind of Onyxia style, players who haven't even beaten Karazhan are taking Gruul and Magtheridon down. Now, that's a very interesting thing to see. Now, Gruul and Magtheridon do not actually require any attunement. Yep. Which is different to the way Onyxia was. Onyxia required an extensive attunement chain, but then again, look at the reason behind that. Why did it have such an extensive attunement? Because it was the only thing there at the time. They didn't want everyone to be caning the encounter so quickly, they needed time. In this case, Grawl and Magtheridon's Lair are already finished. They were already in the game to begin with. Now, Tempest Keep and Serpent Shrine, while they are finished, they are untuned. We know this. Because they're so obscenely hard, and guilds like D&T and Nihilum are actually reporting that encounters are pretty much now and impossible. Mogrim Tidewalker would be a good example. As you'll find out in the interview later when they explain the Mogrim Tidewalker scenario, Nihilum ran their heads up against Mogrim Tidewalker, and he spawns two kinds of ads. Or at least he did. He spawned Murlocs and Water Elementals. Now, the Water Elementals had Spell Reflect, therefore they couldn't be AoE'd down, which made them impossible to kill, pretty much, because you need to AoE that number of ads. They couldn't deal with it. And they then removed that ad completely. Now, that is a huge change. It's not just an HP or spreadsheet change. It is a huge change to the encounter. The fundamentals of the encounter have been changed. It's not a bug fix. It's simply an untuned encounter. Not so good. Has to be said, not so good at all. So, why are there so many of these attunements? Is it because they haven't finished everything yet? I mean, that's the one cynical way of looking at it. That is one very cynical way of looking at it, but I imagine there is an element of truth to it. I don't think that's the entire reason for it. I actually like the system of attunement, because you can choose your path and work your way up to this Raid 2, as they're calling it, level dungeons. And it's just something you can do. You know, you can go walk into Magtheridon's Lake, walk into Grewl's Lair, there's all this stuff that you can access from day one, and it just makes sure that you've got as a guild to dedicate to some particular things. And they have kind of kept a degree of linearity. Kind of. Not by much, admittedly, but there is some. Like, the Karazhan keychain involves you going through some relatively difficult instances. Black Morass, Steam Vaults, Shadow Labyrinth, Arcatraz. Arcatraz requires you to key up in itself. So it's a chain, like the Onyxia chain. However, in this instance, unlike Onyxia, the smaller raid boss dungeons which can be compared to Onyxia do not require attunement, which is a very interesting way of looking at things. And you've got your Naxxramas kind of level instances. They're up there, right at the top. Tempest Keep, Serpent Shrine. Tempest Keep, Serpent Shrine, right at the top. And then, of course, you've got to go to Hial. So, either Hial is going to be so obscenely difficult that it requires this, or they just ain't finished it yet. We really don't know. But to be honest, I do like the system. You know, I think that keying up for these kind of things is good. It gives you a sense of accomplishment and a sense of direction within your guild. Your guild has to dedicate to a particular path. It can't just ponce in somewhere and go and kill some mobs. It just doesn't work that way. You can't just go in there and kill a boss. It does bring some of the old legacy content back and integrates what was a reasonably decent system. It stops people from jumping in the deep end and getting incredibly frustrated and having a lack of direction. Beforehand, the reason for that was the lack of content. They were feeding it to us piecemeal. Now, it's because the content's already there, but some of it is way too hard for you. Way too hard. As in, you cannot do it. End of story, good game, you've got to do something beforehand. So yeah, I'm a fan. I will attest to being a relative fan of attunement. I would say that it's a very good thing. However, and there's always a however, just how far can it go? Where is Black Temple going to be on this list? I assume that you're not going to have to defeat Hayao. I would hope not. I would hope that they're not going back to a really serious idea of linearity, because right now there's quite a nice selection of things you can do. You could go to Tempest Keep, or you could go to Serpent Shrine. Of course, what Nihilum are telling us, and what D&T are telling us, and anyone else that's actually managed to get into Tempest Keep, is that Tempest Keep is a shed load harder than the first few bosses in Serpent Shrine. But then, they're also telling us that that's because it's untuned. Hydros, for instance, has already been nerfed and will probably be nerfed more in the future. Other bosses in Serpent Shrine have already been nerfed. Tempest Keep, that is not the case. The only boss killed so far in Tempest Keep is the Void Reaver. The first boss has not even been killed. There's a little bit more information coming up in the interview just after the show as regards to that. But it is interesting to see that the first boss of Tempest Keep was not killed. You can bypass. It's not so much a linear thing. You can go to another boss, but the Void Reaver is the only one that's been killed so far in Tempest Keep. And that is a very interesting thing to see, because Serpent Shrine is getting caned. People are already on Vash. Now, you could argue that the reason for that is because they're hot-fixing it as they go, and they're not hot-fixing Tempest Keep because people aren't concentrating on it. So, why fix something that people aren't trying? There's a very good question. I suppose that must be the way that they're actually viewing it. You can't justify spending huge amounts of resources on something that no one's doing yet. And again, this might be the reason why they've blocked off the path to Mount Hayal. There's either that, or it's so incredibly difficult and they want to make something really, really difficult to get to. Of course, that's going to cause some problems, because people are they look at, say, Serpent Shrine, Tempest Keep, and they're not too fussed in the sense of lore hounds, Warcraft 3 hounds. They don't, fans do not really care about those two. Yeah, okay, killing Lady Vash and killing Kel'Thas Sunstrider, big deal, compared to the huge climactic battle at the end of Warcraft 3, which is, of course, Mount Hayal. And Mount Hayal requires you to take down Tempest Keep and Serpent Shrine. Now, that really locks the content off to the vast majority of people. I personally don't have a problem with that, because I like to work for my stuff. I like to work my way through and feel a real sense of accomplishment. I don't want to be jumping into that. The climactic event that's supposedly going to be really challenging and epic, and you're going to see all your favourite characters in it. But that's not to say that other people aren't going to get knocked off about it. They really, really are. I think when they realise they're not going to be able to get into Hayal for a very, very long time, and they really want to see what's going on in there, because Captains of Time was something that people got excited about. And they're going to get a little bit knocked off about that. I actually genuinely expect them to make it a little bit easier to get into Hayal. Which is, of course, going to involve serious nerfing if my theory is correct, that Hayal is so incredibly difficult that that's the reason that you need this. And if my other theory is correct, well, Hayal ain't even finished yet. So maybe they're just taking the time to finish it. It will be interesting to see whether or not they make the attunement easier. There really aren't very many, if any, if I can recall examples of them doing that. I mean, let's look back at the attunement before. Attunement before, say, for Naxxramas was very, very linear. You'd already got the rep for it in the first place just by running older instances. And you can compare that to Heroics right now. To get into Shattered Halls Heroic, you need to run all these instances. To even get the Shattered Halls in general, to get the key for it, yeah, I know you can open it with just one person, but if you want the key, you need to be revered. No, you don't. I'm an idiot. You don't actually need that at all, do you? God, I believe I made such a numb mistake. You don't need to be revered at all. To get in Heroic, you need to do that. And you have to do the previous instances in order to do it. You have to specifically do it in the order of, right, your basic instances up to Honoured, at which point they'll stop giving you rep, and then you do your level 70 instance to get you to Revered, which gets you your key, which gets you into your Heroics. Now that compares to the old Nax attunement, in my honest opinion. You're doing older instances to get into newer. It's a very interesting topic. You can email in your opinions to themurloc@gmail.com on this one. Yes, indeed you can. Okay. I think it's time for a little bit of, perhaps, Ask the Murloc, since we've been missing that one for a very long time. You're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio. The Helam interview coming up in just a short number of minutes, 45 to be exact. My name's TotalBiscuit. This is Blue Plz. This is Ask the Murloc. Enjoy.
Ask the Murloc.
Jenkins, you bumbling buffoon. I told you once before. Pull! Ah, the sport of the true gentleman. Arthur replaced that butler. What do you mean I replaced all of my clay pigeons with the only qualified butlers in the village? Then train the damn clay pigeons! You, pigeon boy, who is made of clay, bring me my cane so I can beat you with it. Oh no, it's that time of the week again, isn't it? Peasant, stop treading on my croquet field. You'll ruin the resistance of the surfaces. Oi, you, hand up my prize poisonous orchid. See, now look what you've done. Your hands have fallen off and they're sullying my immaculate grounds. Have him taken away. Arthur, you'd better find a way to motivate these new clay pigeon butlers, or it'll be you on the catapult next. Right, which of you muck-dwelling, mucus-filled pustules is up first? Dear Murloc, why does Sangha Marsh look like Shroom Country? What exactly were the game designers on? Ha ha ha. Are you implying, you wonderfully wondrous, worthless whelp, that there could possibly be any narcotics references within World of Warcraft? Diabolical, preposterous, have him loaded into the catapult. Zangarmarsh is quite obviously not inspired by anything at all. The real reason behind Zangarmarsh is in fact that it is based on a real-life area. Now you're looking at me funny. Stop that or I'll have your eyes on a kebab. You see, all the area and graphic designers with Blizzard Entertainment are in fact only 2 inches tall. They're all shrunk in a mysterious and hilarious disaster involving a gnomish shrink ray. It was later turned into the classic movie Honey, I Shrunk the Murloc, starring me as the Murloc. Before devouring the entire worthless design team, which of course explains why Blade's Edge is so mind-numbingly horrible, they did that one last with the work experience guy. You see, they had the chance to photograph Farmer Giles' mushroom farm, but of course, from their Scoot perspective, it was huge. Sadly, as they moved on to design the ground, at least 2 of them were eaten by a dormouse. Nasty, nasty state of affairs. Ha-ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, I wish to create a magic-using class. However, I do not know which is best. Can you please help me choose?
How about I load you into the catapult, and whatever town you splatter on will be the new class you choose? What do you mean there's no class called Chesterford or Dibley? I will not be trifled with. Have them renamed at once. Fine, I shall use your layman's peasant speak, as disgusting as it sounds to my ears. The clear answer to this would be, of course, the Hunter. Far and away the best magic user in the game, but Hunters have now been banned from the game for mad exploits, so this is not a valid choice. The difference between the classes is quite clear. Priests are your primary DPS class, with such amazing abilities as Smite and Inner Fire. Warlocks can heal using Health Stones and Life Tap, and Mages can blink. Sometimes behind you. I'm not entirely certain as to the purpose of Mages, really. I hear they make good quassels. What I look like to you, the class guru? Get off my lawn! Jenkins, pull!
Ask the Murloc.
Land-ho, mateys! That's right, I said land-ho! That's right, we're going into port tonight. So get your gold from your goals. That's right, we're gonna get drunk. All right now, keep it down. Hold on for a minute, hold on. Who's a real swashbuckler? I want all of you to put your hooks in the air. All the real swashbucklers, yo, your hooks in the air. And wave them all around like you just don't care. A sword and gunfire, we get what we require. But tonight, my mateys, get down with me. All the real swashbucklers, throw your hooks in the air. And wave them all around like you just don't care. We bounce up and down like the turn of the tide. If you wanna have a party, baby, let us inside.
Back the hell up when we sail into the club. Get your hand too close and you'll be pulling back a stub. It's a party at night, alright, it's time to get down. It's a sight to see when the crew hits the town. On the high seas, there's hardly ever time to chill. Empty the coffers, then we raid and refill. Hit our merchant Dutzy, then a port in Brazil. Mountains are molehills when you got this kind of skill. I'm a maniac, set to attack. I've got a knack for dishing out and taking flack. Give me some rum, wine, or a bottle of Jack, and we'll see who's at the bottom of the sea in a sack. All the bottles broken, we be leaving the city smoking. We ain't finished this soon. We plunder from midnight to noon till we stolen each and every little single doubloon. All the while singing this tune.
All the real swashbucklers, yo, your hooks in the air. And wave them all around like you just don't care. A sword and gunfire, we get what we require. But tonight, my mateys, get down with me. All the real swashbucklers, throw your hooks in the air. And wave them all around like you just don't care. We bounce up and down like the turn of the tide. If you wanna have a party, baby, let us inside. I bet you're wondering why my hook's all covered in jewels. Why is that? Because you scurvy fools, I don't follow the rules. I'll take your rubies, I'm no newbie, use your head as a buoy. I'll make your health fail, cause dead men tell no tales. Never fails that our treasure's always breaking the scales. We're so ruthless from the start, we can't be kept in the jail. My eye patch is made of gold, with gems in its folds. The hook has got them too, I can count quite a few of the treasures and the riches that I snatched from me crew. So let's get to the point, I'm the head of this joint. It's the HMS Ricketts, selling out all the tickets. That's just how we kick it, with all these emeralds and ingots. We come in dropping dimes, just like old times. I could kill you with my wit or my razor sharp rhymes. That's right. My hat is custom fit from the port of St. Kitts. We got a scurvy crew style that you hate to admit, all the real swashbucklers throw your hooks in the air and wave them all around like you just don't care. A sword and gunfire, we get what we require, but tonight my mateys get down with me. All the real swashbucklers throw your hooks in the air and wave them all around like you just don't care. We bounce up and down like the turn of the tide. If you wanna have a party, baby, let us inside.
This is WoW Radio, the Weekend Report.
Do not say they heard us singing this now. Oh my god, Leo, you are so fired.
The Lore Keepers.
Let's start with the random lore questions, okay?
Pandaren. Will we ever be able to faction up with them? AKA, will they ever come out of where they're hiding and say hello?
WoW Things Considered.
Sir, I'm a reporter for WoW Things Considered. Can I get a moment of your time?
Flame, death, destruction.
Vendor Trash.
He said, hey, Static, we don't even know exactly what's wrong with you. You want to do a radio show on Fridays at 7? I was like, yeah, sure, guys, I'd love to do it. Let's call it Vendor Trash. What a stupid-ass name.
Max Speed.
What are Warlocks famous for in PvP speed? Are they famous for DPSing?
No.
What are they famous for, Max?
Blue Plz.
The reason there is such a difficulty disparity right now is that Blizzard has completely abandoned legacy raid content.
Octale and Hordak versus the world.
Hey, Hordak, you're looking kind of sluggish.
Yeah, I know. I gotta build up some more rage before we can get started.
On the cards.
You must believe in the heart of the cards. I met FDR.
Nobody cares, Grandpa.
And new for 2007, World of Theorycraft, Deus Ex Machinima, and The X. Many shows, left side, everyone epic. Find out more at www.wcradio.com.
Yes, indeed, the sounds of Captain Dan and the Scurvy Crew. All you real swashbucklers put your hooks in the air, and all those without a sense of humour, well, we just don't care. You're listening to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Alright, we have approximately 38 minutes. I do apologise for my ISP issues today. Fortunately, the interview will not be broadcast through my computer, so this shouldn't be a problem. I hate Virgin Media. I am going to say this on air right now. Virgin Media, Richard Branson, you suck and must fall down a well full of very angry, angry mice who will devour you from the outside in, slowly and quite amusingly. Die. Thank you. And if you think I'm paying my ISP bill this month, you've got another bloody thing coming. Right, okay. Now, one thing to say before I go on. If you do listen to the Weekend Report tonight, which I would strongly recommend, that's after the Nihilum interview, after Octale and Hordak, kicking in right after that. The Terpster song this week is sadly sung by me. Yeah, I got roped into it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But if you want to hear my dulcet tones, or whatever the hell the phrase is, then tune in to the Weekend Report directly after Octale and Hordak tonight. Schedules on the front page, wcradio.com. Right, let's get back on with the WoW stuff. WoW stuff's always good, we like that. Hybrid classes, something of an area of contention in everything. We go all the way back to Dungeons & Dragons, where hybrid classes started getting basement virgins a little bit uppity. And like, well, yeah, they can do this and this and this, and I can only do this. And I've always been a pure class. I've always played pure classes. I'm talking mages, warriors, priests, anything that's got one sole role that does well. Not the jack of all trades, but the master of none, the master of one trade. And there ain't no jack here. So, now, in other RPGs, that kind of works, the whole jack of all trades idea. I'll tell you where it doesn't work, though, and that's right here. It doesn't work, at least in the sense of endgame raid content. Which is, let's face it, and we said it time and again, and I still believe it to this very day, the most important element of WoW is the endgame raid content. And if you've got a bone to pick with that, then by all means let me know. So that's what I believe. And that's what I'll stick to until the day I die. Now, the problem is, with that, why is that an issue? If you have a jack of all trades class, then why on earth should I take you to an endgame raid encounter? Why take the jack when I can take the master? What's the point? It's all about this whole min-maxing idea. Min-maxing became a huge issue around AQ40 and Naxxramas specifically because encounters required you to have exactly the right kind of raid setup. So you had people going in there, and they would go in with these classes. These classes specifically. And there wasn't really all that much room for hybrid, especially not hybrid-specific builds. It's like, you take a Resto Druid, and a Resto Druid is a good healer. And it has combat res. Okay, that's cool. And it can do various other nifty things. It's got a nice buff. So you'll take a Resto Druid. Whether you take that many Resto Druids as compared to Holy Priests, though? Nah, not so sure. Now take Feral Druids. And how many Feral Druids did you honestly take into Naxxramas? And if you did take many Feral Druids in, how far did you get? Now, it's alright, fine and good, taking a token Feral Druid. Maybe for Leader of the Pack, a reasonable buff for a melee group. However, did you take them seriously, and were they a part of your min-max strategy? I would hazard a guess as to no. The reason for that is obvious, because Feral Druids didn't used to be comparable DPS to Rogues, and they didn't used to be comparable tanks to Warriors, so why bother taking them? It's the same as arguing, why take a Hunter? At least at this point in time, you've still got a similar problem with the Hunter. The odd thing about the Hunter is the Hunter isn't it's not really a primary DPS class, but it's not really a hybrid either. It's just mediocre. It's supposed to do damage. It's a ranged damage class, but then again, there already are ranged damage classes. Mages, Warlocks. Ranged damage classes which are better and do better DPS and have more utility in a raid, which is why people aren't taking Hunters these days to raid encounters. Now that's an issue. What the issue we're dealing with is hybrids. Now, there used to be the whole jack-of-all-trades idea, and now that's not the case. They've changed them around. And in my opinion, they have done a very good job of doing so. And let's specifically look at why I believe that. Okay, so, let's take an example. Hybrid class. First hybrid idea. Let's have a look. Druid is the most obvious choice. Now, Druids, great tanks now, on a par with Warriors. Better for tanking certain encounters than Warriors are. Our main tank is a Druid, and I have no doubts that we will be kicking ass and taking names with him. Yep. Now that's fair enough. What about DPS? For DPS, they're great as well. But that's okay. I mean, we don't really take Feral Druids as DPS. There's no real point. What they really excel in is tanking. And they now do excel in it, so there's a point in taking them. And what about Resto Druids? Well, you've got Tree of Life form, which gives you a very, very unique perspective on healing. And their heals are very powerful. People are actually saying right now that Holy Priests are out-healed by Resto Druids so significantly that Holy Priests need a significant buff. I've been told that some of the endgame guilds are only running with one Holy Priest. Now, let's take hybrid specs. Shadow Priest. Before the laughing stock of everything, why take a Shadow Priest as DPS? It pulls aggro, it could be healing. Now it's a case of, oh yeah, we're taking Shadow Priests because they give us mana. Loads of mana. They're a great mana battery and they don't pull as much aggro anymore. So they're great to have in a caster group. They're awesome as part of a group. That's good. What other things have we got? Let's have a look at, obviously, Paladins, who are a hybrid class. Paladins are great at a lot of things now, except, of course, for DPS. And don't say the Paladins are good for DPS. Please do not try and say that with a straight face, or I will come over there and hit you in the face with a half-brick and a sock. And then you'll never have the word straight face again, trust me. I mean, dear God, no, a Paladin's not a DPS class. It never has been. It never will be. Stop pretending. However, as a healer, they are great. They're a healer and buffer. A very good healer and buffer class. Their heals are great, their buffs are great. Judgment of Wisdom is genius, and they're actually really good tanks as well now. For multi-tanking, they're second to none, specifically because of the Captain America shield. And, of course, Consecration and their multiple ways to grab aggro on multiple targets quite quickly. They have multiple target snap aggro, which, aside, of course, from challenging Shout, no one else has, which gives them great viability. That's a change that's been made. Before, a Paladin was a healer or nothing. Now it does have some viability there. Shamans. Shamans have, while they have had a little bit of a raw end of the deal, they do have some nice things. Earth Shield is great. You can't even dispute that. They've got totems which are more useful. Wrath of Air. That's a great thing. It really, really is. Now let's have a look at, say, melee shamans. People who want to do damage as a shaman. Well, we have a shaman in our raid that, of course, has the Unleashed Rage. Now, if you put that in a melee group, it gives them, what, 10% extra attack power? That's a great buff to have. You can't complain, especially when he then starts stomping Wind Fury or Grace of Air, Strength of Earth, all his buffing stuff. For a melee group, a Shaman, especially an Enhancement Shaman, is great. Really, really great. It does the damage, but it's primarily also a support class. It's like having a look at Arcane Mages, for instance. Arcane Mage. What's so good about an Arcane Mage these days? The answer is quite simple. It's a 4-letter word, begins with S, ends in W. It's slow. Slow is the reason why it's great. Slow is awesome. Slow works on most bosses. This is a very good thing. Slow is fantastic. It suddenly made Arcane Mages viable to some degree. Now, I've respec'd out of Arcane. I admit that I've spec back to Fire because they fixed it. But Arcane Mages at least do have some utility, and they're not completely and totally laughed at. Which is fair enough. What else? Give me an example. Are you a hybrid player? Do you like to actually go in and play a hybrid spec, and are you accepted? In that case, I would suggest you email me at themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Now, I've got to give Blizzard props for this, I really do, because they pulled around what I saw as a completely hopeless situation and turned it into a genuine actual variety. There's still some classes that can use some help. Moonkin, for instance. That 5% crit is nice, but whether or not a Moonkin's worth having, especially when Moonkin pull aggro like there's no one's business, it's difficult. Now, you can look at Moonkin and say that Moonkin needs some kind of aggro reduction. That 5% spell crit is amazing. No two ways about it. I'm not going to dispute that. Cyclone is also a really nice piece of crowd control. However, they really need that aggro sorting out. They're kind of like Shadow Priest used to be. It's like Shadow Priest used to be okay with Vampiric Embrace. Like, well, it's a little bit of group healing. But they didn't have Vampiric Touch, which made them mana batches. And they certainly didn't have aggro reduction. And their DPS wasn't all that amazing. Moonkin are kind of in the same situation right now. They've only got one thing going for them, and that's that 5% buff. So yeah, something needs to be done about that. But I really do genuinely believe that they are on the right lines. I really do. Some stuff could use some work. It really could. But that's just going to happen. It's like, say, what is going to be the only problem with this hybrid idea? And someone will turn around, especially if they're playing a pure class, and they will say, the problem is that my pure class is being outmoded by a hybrid class. That can't work. They're supposed to be a jack of all trades. And that's a really difficult balance to strike between the two. How do you do that? How do you strike the balance between being incredibly useful and not outmoding a primary class? And the master of the class, the master of the particular niche, should be doing the best out of the lot, surely. It's like saying, right, mages should be your best ranged DPS class. Warriors should be your best tanking class. It's your primary classes. A holy priest you would think would be the best healer. And if that's not the case, then something is wrong. But they're really going in the right direction. I really do feel that they're doing well with it. There's got to be a lot of work to be done. But the principles have been set down in such a way that they have moved completely away from this whole jack-of-all-trades idea, because they realised that while it worked outside, it's like, yay, in PvP you can heal, you can, go bear form if you're being hit on by a melee class, you can be a rogue as well. That's great in PvP. Take that into a raid environment and you're suddenly a third wheel. Why bother? There's absolutely no point in you being there and doing that, because someone else can do it better, and they're more than willing to do it better, and they're, to be quite honest, more practiced at it. It's like saying, well, okay, so a druid is better at DPS than I am. It's like, well, no, he isn't, actually. A druid is not better than DPS than I am. Even if the class was better, he probably still won't be able to keep up with me, because I know the principles behind my class, and I've been playing it since day one. So, I should be better. I'm a primary class. I know my class inside out. I've been playing with it since day one. It's the only character that I've played seriously. I should know my particular niche, and I'm not going to instruct people on how to fill up their roles. Otherwise, no, absolutely not. But yeah, I'm really pleased, actually. I'm really pleased seeing them. Now, my raid composition, we've been getting our raid composition right for Karazhan recently. And it's a difficult one, because min-maxing in a 10-man environment is tricky when you've got so many people with so many different useful specs. And yes, I will take a Shadow Priest. 110% I will take a Shadow Priest. It goes in the caster group. It gets the casters more mana, they can DPS for longer, they can afford to go all out for longer, and that is really important. So my caster group looks great. Melee group? What do I need? Well, my feral druid is a tank. And then I'm going to throw all my other stuff in there. I throw my enhancement shaman in there. Getting an extra 10% attack power to all Amelias. My off-tank is in there as well. They're getting that extra attack power, they're hitting harder, therefore they are building somewhat more rage. My rogues go in there. Anything like that, that will go in that group. And then obviously I have to throw a Warlock in there for the Blood Pact buff. But it's good, it works. And it's a good use of hybrids. And I know for a fact that other guilds have been using hybrids in a pretty major way. And I'm not going to dispute that it's a really good idea, but there is still some work to be done. No two ways about that. There are certain classes who really are getting the short end of the stick. Rogues and hunters come as primary examples. I mean, as a mage, I'm having no issues doing the damage and having the utility that I've always had. It's cool. I can do exactly what I used to be able to do. Hunters and rogues, on the other hand, not so much. You know, I don't take a hunter. I don't even have a hunter in my guild. What's the point? What's he going to do? Aspect? Or knows to aspects? That's not worth wasting a raid spot on. They have a tendency to pull aggro. Their pets have a tendency to go and run around and aggro something that I don't want, so we end up getting ads. They're a really subpar DPS class, and let's face it, they end up stealing all the other loot. Sorry, all the hunters, but really, this is the situation you're in right now. And I am not, by any means, approving of that situation. It does need to be dealt with. It's something that does definitely need to be dealt with by Blizzard, and they need to look at the hunter class very particularly. And they've always had this issue. How can we fit the hunter in there? It's a really nice idea, but it just doesn't really work in a raid situation. Remember back in the day, the only reason you take a hunter is because of Trank Shot, and now you don't even need that. Because, of course, newer hunters will not have gone through Molten Core, therefore they do not have that. It's just not going to happen. So a hunter's gone right the way back to square one, the way they were before all of this stuff was put in, of a hunter being completely, totally, bloody worthless in a raid. And hunters are kind of in that ether, that purgatory between hybrid and primary classes, and they just end up being a waste of space. And that needs dealing with, in my honest opinion. And I would assume that most hunters out there would agree. If you do not, though, email me at themurloc@gmail.com. Now, after the break, we have the second win for next week. Yes!
Second win!
Another 22 minutes to go before the Nihilum interview. Oh, yes. Awesome stuff. Shout-outs coming up, and I'm going to go into a little bit of rap in the forums right now. If you wish to rap along with this week's thread, it will be posted in the main IRC channel, so get in there. WCRadio.com, click the IRC chat button on the top of the screen, or use your MIRC client to get to irc.wowirc.com and join pound or hash WOW Radio. Coming up right now, this is Rap in the Forums. Hide behind the sofa. Enjoy. Yo, 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 faux shizzle and so forth. It's time for yet another insane in the brain edition of Rap in the Forums. Yes, indeed. What do we do in Rap in the Forums? We take some of the worst threads from the forums, we turn them into hip-hop styling, and the world implodes from the sheer stupidity of it all. Yes. This is great. This is really good. From Diabolix, from Boulderfist. And he asks, are Blizzard racist? Oh, noes. They be oppressing. It's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Blizzard racism. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't think of any major lore NPC or anything like that is black. Even if it doesn't show much, they do have some attachment to medieval design in their lore for humans. That kind of dictates something automatically for them. It's nothing racist on their part, just tidbits of what lore remains. Interrogator Vision asks, no, he's just an LMAO. Racist reported. I was saying if that's someone that clearly makes an effort twice a week to get some colour, is town racist on the Orcs black? They do the hammer time like it's never going out of style word. You know I'm talking about black humans, but good job trying to make a serious post into a joke fest. Well, if you roll a human, you can make him pretty damn dark. I would say closer to the Middle Eastern than African. Just my 2 cents, so Blizzard is racist and supports terrorism /boycott. Well, yeah, but me making some random black hair. Name black people, lol, does chase the fact that Blizzard has excluded black people from being a major lore NPC. You can, but if you make it a rogue and name it what the hell is that? I don't even know. I'm offended that you don't believe I'm dark-skinned. Well, this is odd, tan or black, it doesn't matter, at least it should. None of this should matter in the first place. If he's black, there's proof that Blizzard isn't racist because they chose to put him in with any sort of fuss. If he's tan, it's still proof of no racism, because even though it isn't directly related to racism, it shows that they are perfectly fine with people looking different. To also note, and in a slight link with the Hammer Time remark, this game is kind of biased on racism too. If you think about it, at this point there is little reason for the Alliance to be fighting the Horde about, aside from that fact that they just don't like each other, the human nations of Azeroth, the European. In the pseudocultural decoration, black people are from Africa and didn't have a presence in the source material / basic history FTW. Please take a look at the lore to another forum. This is a serious discussion about the lack of black major or NPCs. So does that mean China is a racist nation, or we now call boycott Scandinavia? So is that due to cousin of the nagger that stole my bike? Is it the cousin of the nagger that stole my bike? It's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. So when is this Africa-based content that you're playing is this going to be released? On a side note, it seems only humans speak American English. My dad made a black paladin with blonde hair and blue eyes named Jorga. He's a regular UN. No, this is you. Trolling the forums. You got Nagran, the Macau, just talks in general. Oh, I guess it could count as the black, so wow. This is no way a troll post. I am pretty angered in the fact that you think my sympathy of the black race is some kind of joke. People act like you make white people look bad. I'm implying no such thing. Again, the human nations of Azeroth, all of them are rather obvious pseudo-European in culture, both material and social. No Africans required. What about the fact they all have an American accent? Maybe you're just being racist, won't even acknowledge that orcs are black. You made me sick. What about it? Not to sidetrack or anything but the most racist person on the planet of black people. They're the first ones to make sure we know when we didn't include a black person in the mix. They're also the first to exclude a white dude from everything they do, but I don't want to get into a heated debate. All this thread will be deleted in no quick seconds, so I just want to make sure you choose your words wisely on these issues. You need to take your hate of black people off these forums and back to one of your clan rallies. Wow, Azeroth is a history of various races, coming through from random portals from other worlds. Maybe the original humans were a group of Americans, mostly white, who then spread across the world. I don't hate black people, I hate any racist. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, every race is guilty of it. I was just gathering your you make white people look bad full. Yes, that's a very rude word. The law in this regard is important to the topic. It dictates certain things within the game world and how they are handled if you want to address racism within the game. Why don't include the orcs and such? Because there is a very large aspect of racism cast between the Alliance and the Horde and how they interact. The fact that there is no important human that is black in WoW could be little more than a lazy act on Blizzard's part. The rift cast between the Alliance races and the Horde races in this case was done on purpose to cause tension. However, this means it was pretty much a purposeful act of racism. No, this does not in any way mean the Blizzard employees are racist. It was used as a motivator within the game to spur on the conflict, but simply because someone thought any one race was more deserving or otherwise. Trolling about racism is a very pointless thing to do that will likely get you back. Talking about it in a civilized fashion, however, is a nice way to learn things and deal with any possible issues. I'm sorry, when you go on these forums on a hate-mongering rant, it just seems too far. This is a very special thank you to all of our iTunes listeners who continue to subscribe to our podcasts and download using the iTunes client. Did you know that you can in fact review and rate our podcasts using the iTunes client simply by going to the feeds page and writing yourself a review?
Show me what you've got!
This not only helps us to gather valuable feedback about our shows and improve the quality of our output,
show them no mercy,
but also provides us with the valuable promotion that we need to push the station to the next level.
I'm just getting warmed up.
So take a moment out of your day and rate and review us using iTunes. Thank you for your continued support.
The time for practice is over. Show me what you've learned.
Yes, indeed, folks, you're tuning in to Blue Plz here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. So that was the horrible sounds of rap in the forums. And if I haven't lost hundreds of listeners from that, I will be very surprised. The Nihilum interview coming up in 15 minutes' time. Stay tuned. Also, the rest of the night after the Nihilum interview, Octail and Hordak versus the World, our general gamer show for WoW players. And after that, the Weekend Report, which consists of me singing with Lido and Terp, so that's really, really horrible, I know. But never mind. Stay tuned for all of that coming up. Oh, yes. Anyone that misses the Nihilum interview, and it would be very silly to do so, the interview will be available for download after the interview finishes. Oh, yes. Good stuff. Right, I have one more topic to cover before I hand over to someone with a better internet connection to deal with this. Right. Now, this week's Second Wind. Yes, I did say. Second Wind. What's going to be happening next week? The topic which I'm going to be covering. We're going to start it off this week, and a little bit to start off next week. Second Wind. Many rep grinds, left side, even side. Are rep grinds the only true form of progressive content? And before I launch into my little tirade about this, I have a few opinions on various different things, specifically hybrid classes. Some very good stuff here. Now, Mr. Kazi, who happens to be the enhancement shaman in my guild, he says this. Well, I myself am a hybrid, i.e. a shaman. I'm spec'd enhancement and I absolutely love it, and I'm accepted into most parties because of all my totem buffs and my battle shout-like buff, i.e. Unleash Rage with a 10% AP, and for Bloodlust. And you know that yourself, it's an awesome buff and it really helps on bosses. I also like playing a hybrid because I can DPS pretty decently. But I also have the ability to heal myself if I should pull aggro. And I'm always good for a few backup heals if the healer is somehow unavailable to heal or overwhelmed. I know by now that I love the Shaman class. It's the only thing I ever played fully, and it's my only level 70. And I played it since the beginning of time, with now 115 days played. And I can only say I've loved every single day of it, and I never trade it in for anything. Yeah, I can officially say it is incredibly useful. Now, however, I have people that are most certainly disagreeing with my views on hunters, and they're saying this. This is from Horde Hit Squad. His name is Hanno. He's from Masrigo. And he says, I must say I heavily disagree with your opinion about the usefulness of hunters. I play a priest on Masrigo EU, and I happen to see you around /lick for the win. Oh, Lord. Ugh. On topic, I used to play a hunter, and with my guild, Horde Hit Squad, I took him all the way to Nefarian. I found that a hunter is the class that is most depending on the attention you are paying. You could do /assist MT and /follow MT and go fetch a cup of coffee, but your DPS would of course be insignificant to mages. But I found that if I paid attention by using the right rotations, I can out-DPS any mage. Also, a hunter is about doing his DPS safe. Sure, a mage can do DPS, but does a DPS have 100% aggro wipe with a mere 30 seconds cooldown? No, but we do have one with a 5-minute cooldown and passive aggro reduction. In my knowledge, invisibility has a 5-minute cooldown. Yep, just like Vanish. If a hunter has played well, he has got, for instance, Freezing Trap and Feign Death Disengage. Yes, disengage if he gets aggro. If you've got a bad hunter in your group, you will probably be in for an hour or two of wiping, but a well-played hunter can be one of the best additions to your group. Lastly, there was a new skill you might have heard about called Misdirection. Misdirection directs the aggro of the next 3 attacks to somebody else, which is very good at fights like Blackheart the Inciter. Yeah, I kind of agree with that to some degree, but again, it's not really talking about raid content there. I would agree that hunters are useful in 5-mans, but when it comes to stuff that really has, freezing traps aren't going to help on, all that kind of thing, it's really quite tricky. Right, we've got some more emails about this. Matthew Breed says this. I have multiple level 70 characters, of which my main is a feral druid, and most of the time, I seem to have me as main tank, apart from a couple of boss encounters where I go back into my rest of gear and heal. Trouble we have found, the reason I am main tank, though, is that a feral druid can pull aggro off any main tank without trying, and I assume he's meaning a DPS feral druid. Also, my gear is a lot easier to get hold of for tanking. One thing I found, though, is that in Heroics as a feral tank, that without a paladin to give Blessing of Salvation to the rest of my group, you have to give me a lot longer to build aggro than a prot warrior needs. I assume that's the way that it works. I believe isn't aggro multiplicative as a feral druid, whereas it's additive with a tank, which means that early on a tank is better, but over the long run, a feral druid can build more aggro. Now, he goes on. And yeah, Shaman now rock in any raid, and we can try and take 1 or 2 from melee and casters. Also, Paladins seem to have become the best single-target healer as far as mana efficiency goes. Yeah, it's a very interesting set of information that we're being given there. I've got a few more things on hunters here. Mr. Faithos from Balnazar EU, he's a level 70 mage, says, while I agree that hunters do lack a lot of raid viability, there are a few things which can make them worthwhile. Scorpion Sting is a minus 5% chance to hit, and that could save a fair bit on healing. Ferocious Inspiration, when their pet crits, everyone in the group gets plus 3% to damage on all abilities. True Shot Aura, of course, plus attack power, Aspect of the Wild, plus nature resistance, and Misdirection, the best aggro tool for the start of a fight. Expose Weakness, a survival talent which has a 30% chance to apply a debuff on crit, which increases the AP of all attackers by 25% of the hunter's total agility. Just a heads up on the buffs and hunter tools can supply to the raid. Fact, however, cannot be denied that they do need a bit of tweaking. Yeah, definitely agree with that. I've got another one here from Ragnar A.T. Morkan. And he says, Shadow Priests, my life as a Shadow Priest. Shadow Priests have been buffed very well indeed, and they work very well together with Paladins, but I still meet OMG, L2P, and reroll raid spec when I go in pogs to different instances. I'll meet people that consider Shadow Priests useless, and they want me removed to be replaced with someone that can do decent DPS. Funny thing is, I own them on the DPS meters, even though I'm a Shadow Priest. Now, I can attest to this, because when I was playing my Arcane spec, I was having to fight with my Shadow Priest who had similar gear. I was always beating him, but not by much. This is my personal experience of it. I think I can probably do it now with my fire spec, since I don't go all the time with it. But I do see his point there, most definitely. And he continues. He says, I'm Shadow Priest, and that actually means they should be nerfed in PvE, because it's not fair for a Warlock when they outget DPS by a Shadow Priest. But then again, you can also argue that Shadow Weaving is a buff to a Warlock anyway, and they are two classes which have a particular synergy. At least that's my honest opinion on it anyway. They have something of a synergy with Shadow Weaving and Curse of Shadows. They can benefit each other. Now, he goes on, concerning Hunters. They are still usable for kiting, emergency trapping, and similar, so I would not go so far as calling them totally useless. I do, however, feel bad for Shamans, because at least in my previous guild we would prefer a Druid, Pally, or Priest healer, and then there were not really a spot for Shaman healers. And if we were to bring a Shaman, it would probably be at the cost of a Rogue. Well, rest of Shamans are a little bit of a different case. I've never used one, particularly. They have uses. Mana Tide is one example, although now with Shadow Priest being an exceedingly good way of getting mana back, and Horde having access to Paladins with Judgment of Wisdom, it's perhaps not so much of an issue. That's my honest opinion on it anyway, that's what I'm saying. So, rest of Shamans, what else do they have? They've got Earth Shield, which is useful, and they've of course got the Chain Heal, and Chain Heals are great. There's no two ways about it. Chain Heal is an exceedingly good way of healing multiple targets in a group that's getting battered. And it's a very mana-efficient way of doing it as well. But no, I'd say Shamans have definitely got some use in there, definitely. I've got one last opinion that I'm going to have from a Tankadin, and he says this. He says, Hey TB, Artenis again here. My highest level character, Artenis, a level 60 human paladin, has been spec'd into a tanking build back before the Burning Crusade hit, and I was running Black Rock Depths. I originally had a mix of Retribution and a slight bit of Holy, but a guild member had given me ideas regarding a prot spec after we watched my fighting style. Afterwards I respec'd into that spec, which I'm still using, and a week later I went into BRD with him. During which, due to the spec I was using, I was able to hold aggro on groups of mobs exceedingly well, allowing our Mage and Warlock to AoE like mad while containing aggro. I do know strengths and weaknesses behind the tanking, and I do know a warrior can hold aggro on a singular target much better than I can. I also know my DPS, while good for a paladin, is pathetic in comparison to other classes. I do know also that our judgments can be a nice boon to boss fights, whether it's judgment of light, wisdom, etc. Now, in my opinion, I think Blizzard has done a nice job regarding making the hybrids valid for other classes. Before, I disliked Artenis as a character because of the fact that in the endgame situation I'd be a healer and nothing else. Now I'm beginning to work on a Blood Elf Paladin on the Thunderhorn server simply because I enjoy being a Tankadin. That spec is valid. Yeah, I'll go with that. I really will. I've seen, and I have had, an exceedingly good Tankadin in my guilds. Shame he was an emo kid, but yeah, he could hold aggro on multiple targets really well, and I like that. It's a very valuable thing to have. Right, now, I've got to get on to the second win topic before I do shout-outs this time. We have a total of, by the looks of it, 5.5 minutes. 5.5 minutes before the Nihilum interview, so I'm going to quickly run over.
Second wind!
And over the course of the week, podcast listeners and live listeners, email the Murloc@gmail.com with the subject Second Wind with your opinions on this particular topic. Now, have you experienced the rep grind? Of course you have, because you've been playing WoW. Now, have they overdone it? The Burning Crusade has introduced huge numbers of rep grinds. Now, in my honest opinion, a lot of these rep grinds are very, very good. Some of them aren't. Say, the Consortium rep grind is as bad as any of the other horrible rep grinds used to be. It's one faction and it's a hand-in and quests, and that's all about it. Whereas other factions, specifically the ones based in each zone, I take, for example, Shatar, Thrallmar, Honor Hold, Cenarian Expedition. Those are all gainable via instances, which you were going to be running anyway. Now, you have to run those instances in order to get your heroic keys, which of course unlock the next level of things. Which means that I have quite a few revered factions quite now, which I didn't used to have in the normal game because you didn't really earn that rep that easily. And if you did, there wasn't even a point in having it anyway. A nice piece of gear. There and there. Now there's an awful lot of gear now, a serious amount of gear, and again, the heroic keys make getting to Revered with a faction really important. So, Revered is something now of a default state which you really are expected to reach if you want access to all the content. And Exalted is something you can push for if there is something there that you want. Example, a Feral Druid tank would be insanely stupid not to push for Cenarian Expedition rep, because you can acquire the Earth Warden. That's a good thing. And no matter what, any silly Feral Druid might complain that they nerfed the DPS. Yes, I refer to the people we talked about a couple of weeks ago that think that DPS actually matters for a Feral Druid. Yeah. Morons. There's a lot of rep grinding. Now, is it the true progressive content? Is it something that anyone can do given time? And is it what you want to see? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Give me your opinions. Email them to me over the course of this week. The Murloc@gmail.com, subject title Second Wind, to be read out on next week's show. Now, you have approximately 3 minutes and 15 seconds to send me shoutouts before the Nihilum interview kicks off tonight. Grand event indeed. Oh, yes. Gotta love it. Okay. Shout-out time. Email themurloc@gmail.com. PM me on IRC for your shout-outs. Shout-out must go to Bladescope at the Venture Co. from Access Denied for doing it behind the bushes of Shatra with... oh, good lord. Yeah, I don't even want to hear about that. That's just horrific. No. Oh, good lord. I've already got so many PMs I cannot read them. Let's see. Let's reduce a few. Right, okay. A shout-out to Roast Biff for kicking off a huge argument between me and Mrs. Biff about raid class utility with much shouting and waving of arms. That's me not getting any for a week. Thanks a lot. Roast Biff, congratulations. Good lord. Nihilum Drea says, play with a good tank and good DPS when a hunter can't stand a chance versus good mages, rogues, and shadow priests. Yep, you're right. Panacea says, shout out to any prot warrior that applies to our guild. That's a Blue Plz guild at Mazugo. We will pay for your transfer. How can I help you? A shout out to emo people, QQ More. That's from Skylaser. A shout out to Zortx, or is it Vortex? Vortex, who skipped school because he didn't do his maths homework. That's from Toasterbot. Good lord in heaven. Shout out to all the Maltese people listening to this show. Very good. That's from Curfew. I like Malta. I've been to Malta. It's awesome. I would recommend there as a holiday location. It's fun and it's nice and warm and people are nice. It's cool. Now, what else? A shout out to Glyndy on Lightbringer US for hitting 66. A shout out to the whole Mazugo server, specifically the Prophets Guild. That's from JJ. Shout out to my upcoming podcast, The Geek's Den. That's from someone who didn't even give me a name, so that doesn't really help. A shout out to Forum Trolls for They Must Die. It's from Sniper Crowbar. Shameless shout out to the Get Those Tags to Apply to Our Guild. That's from Kazi. Apply to Blue Plz. You'll love it. Shout out to Hectic Distraction, Zekrosh, and myself from Killed in Action on Agamagamagan. Listening to the show while in Karazhan. A shout out from Enigma, or to Enigma, or for Enigma. We don't know, from Vash EU, who will be taking Shade of Around soon and skipping my favourite boss, Ilhoof, who is still need the feral stick from despite my whining. Yeah, Ilhoof is a very, very evil thing. More shout outs. I'm running out of breath. I'm about to collapse. A shout out to Ruin on Outland for downing Magtheridon. That's from Nish. Very well done to you. I've already given a Bladescope shout out. No more to him. It's Bartleby. Yes, Bartleby is doing a podcast called The Geek's Den. It's upcoming. A shout out to the Warlocks on Twilight's Hammer EU. Please stop specking Felguard already. It sucks in PvE. Can we have a shout out to Toasterbot and I didn't skip school? Skeep? What the hell is Skeep? Skip school. I was ill from Vortex. What else have we got? We've got like 20 seconds before I have to hand over. Shout out to my guild called Champions of Azeroth on Thorian Brotherhood server. Please PM Alexar for an invite. One last shout-out. No, I'm not shouting to Fallout Boy, they suck. A shout to the Shatar Realm for almost being completely void of people, and a hug from LF Garen. Shout to the Sauna Guild on Storm Reaver for server first Hydrosity Unstable kill. That's from Keety, well done. And a shout-out to myself, and from myself, to Nihilum, who will be interviewed very, very soon. I'm out of here. This has been Blue Plz. Download our podcast, WCRadio.com. I've been TotalBiscuit. I'm about to collapse. Good night from me. You've been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Plz, one of World of Warcraft's longest-running podcasts and shows. You can check out all the shows at wcradio.com. Be sure to dig us at dig.com if you like what we're doing, and rate us on iTunes. You can, in fact, download all of our other shows at wcradio.com. Click